This is Edwin Landseer. Despite his scruffy appearance, this man was one of the greatest painters and sculptors of Victorian Britain. So prolific was his talent, he earned himself a knighthood. Many of his works may well be familiar to you, even if his face is not. Landseer specialized in paintings of animals, most notably animals interacting with their environments. These animals would usually include dogs, horses, and stags. They were painted in a realistic manner, with an underlying emphasis on the beauty and majesty of the natural world. Perhaps his most well-known works are the lion sculptures at the base of Nelson's Column in Trafalgar Square. However, there is one painting of Landseer's that holds a somewhat darker reputation. It was unveiled in 1864 at the Royal Academy's summer exhibition, and while the critics there generally praised the painting, there was an undeniable element of terror emanating from this image. Today, the painting hangs at the University of London and is part of the Royal Holloway collection. Even to this day, it is not without its controversies. During exam season, the painting in question is covered up with a Union flag. The students taking their exams abide by this change, not wishing to invite misfortune at the most critical time of their studies. Rumours and legends are abound regarding this strange little painting. Some say that one student, upon looking at the painting, went mad and later killed themselves in their dormitory. Another is said to have been so haunted by the painting that they too killed themselves, though not before leaving a note, citing the eyes within the painting would follow them wherever they went. Now, of course, these are just urban legends, silly little stories aimed at spreading fear for fun. And yet, the painting is still covered during exam season. Such is the power of superstition and legend. The painting in question is titled Man Proposes, God Disposes. It is said that to gaze upon this painting will bring great misfortune. In this episode of Urban Folklore, we will be looking at many such cursed paintings. Francisco Goya is personally one of my favourite painters. Many of you watching may well be familiar with some of his works. He was born and spent much of his artistic career in Spain in the 18th and 19th century. His talent as an artist was acquired at a young age, and it would be during his youth he would become one of the most esteemed painters in all of Spain. His works as a royal court painter were bright, uplifting, optimistic, naive. Goya would soon learn that he was living in a very troubled time in history. During his lifetime, he would see and experience Napoleon's invasion of Spain and the subsequent Peninsular War. He would also witness the re-emergence of the Spanish Inquisition and narrowly avoid death at their hands. He saw the ideas and ideals of the Enlightenment evaporate into bleak nihilism. And on top of all this, Goya's personal health began to deteriorate as he slowly went deaf and mad. In his later years, these things would all have an impact on how Goya saw the world. Gone was the optimism, the bright colours and the joyful scenery. And in its place now was this. In the last years of his life, Goya would produce a series of dark-themed paintings titled The Black Paintings, although he wouldn't be the one to name them this. For Goya, these paintings had no name, nor did they even have an intended audience. The black paintings were discovered long after Goya had died. They were inside his house, painted directly onto the walls. These images were never meant to be seen by anyone besides the artist himself. They are a manifestation of pure turmoil, the hands that crafted them decrepit and sick of the earth. It is perhaps unsurprising, then, that many consider these paintings cursed, but the notion of a curse is easily found in the context behind the creation of these artworks. The black paintings were a known result of Goya's tragic life circumstances, as well as his ailing health. So in this way, they are cursed, but the curse is purely contextual. One could look at the black paintings and get from them a feeling of despair or doom directly from Goya himself, thus cursing the viewer. Man proposes, God disposes also has some very dark context attached to it, which could explain its cursed reputation. When you're looking at this painting, you're not merely seeing two polar bears, but you're actually witnessing the fate of a lost expedition. Specifically the Franklin expedition of 1845, in which a group of over 100 men set sail for the Arctic, only to vanish without a trace, consumed by the terrifying forces of nature. Perhaps the cursed fate of the Franklin expedition transferred itself onto the painting. It would seem that context is important when looking at so-called cursed paintings. However, some curses are more elaborate and strange than others, as we will now see. The Crying Boy is a mass-produced print of a painting by Italian painter Giovanni Bragolin. This was the pen name of the painter Bruno Amarillo. It was widely distributed from the 1950s onwards. There are numerous alternative versions of this painting, all of which are portraits of tearful young boys or girls. It seems this was quite the popular print to own by all sorts of clientele in the 1950s. Why anyone would want a print like this remains elusive to me, though its popularity through the years has only been darkened by the alleged curse attached to it. It was discovered by British firefighters in the 1980s that amongst the ruins of burnt houses, they would frequently come across undamaged copies of The Crying Boy laying in the ashes. This occurrence took place so often that it didn't take long for rumours of a curse to spread. It was in early September 1985 when the phenomenon entered public domain, when Yorkshire fireman Peter Hall was quoted in a national newspaper as saying that fire brigades across the north of England had found examples of the same picture remaining untouched in fires whose causes remained unknown. Hall spoke out after his brother Ron Hall, who did not believe the story, deliberately bought a copy of The Crying Boy to disprove the curse, found his home mysteriously burnt down soon afterwards. Seeing that the picture had been removed intact from the charred ruins, Ron Hall put his boot through it. Dora Brand of Mitcham, Surrey, saw her home reduced to a pyre 6 weeks after she bought the painting, and although it was among many others she owned, it was the only one that survived. Sandra Cask of Kilburn said that she, her sister, her mother and a friend had all suffered fires since buying copies of that picture. On the 21st of October 1985, the Perillo Pizza Palace in Great Yarmouth was gutted by fire, although its prominently displayed Crying Boy picture had remained in pristine condition. On the 24th of October the same year, the Godper family of South Yorkshire lost their home to an unexpected fire. The Crying Boy picture displayed in their living room stayed unmarked, while pictures on either side of it had been completely consumed by flames. On the very next day, in Heswall, Merseyside, a pair of the paintings hanging in the living room and dining rooms of the house belonging to the Amos family were found intact after a gas explosion destroyed the building. In November that same year, a woman from Leeds, who destroyed her picture of the crying boy, seems certain that its destruction was to blame for the deaths of her husband and 3 sons in a subsequent fire. On the 12th of November, Malcolm Vaughan of Gloucestershire helped to destroy a neighbour's picture. He returned home to find his own living room ablaze for reasons which firemen were unable to explain. In December 1985, 67-year-old William Armitage died in a mysterious fire that swept through his house in Weston-super-Mare. It was discovered that the crying boy picture was found intact, lying beside the pensioner's charred body. One of the firemen who dealt with the blaze was afterwards quoted as saying, "I've never believed in the jinx up until now, but when you actually come across a picture in a gutted room, and it's literally the only thing that hasn't been touched, it is most odd." The crying boy is a peculiar example of a mass-produced curse, if that is to be believed. As for the original artist himself is concerned, Giovanni Bragolin, there is nothing especially noteworthy that stands out about this particular man. He was an artist most well known for painting the rather odd subject of crying children. There is a rumour floating around which claims that Bragolin had painted children from a local orphanage, which had subsequently burnt down. However, there doesn't appear to be any evidence to substantiate this claim. It is yet another layer of strangeness. Rational explanations have been put forward, the most common and sound one being that the prints were treated with a varnish containing fire retardant. In a fire, the string holding the painting to a wall would be the first to deteriorate, resulting in the painting landing face down on the floor and thus being protected. However, the curse of the painting has been firmly implanted on the populace, and this had finally culminated in mass bonfires of the crying boy. There is very little known of this painting. We don't know who painted it, or why, or when. We don't even know the real name of this painting, if it ever had one, though it has since been dubbed the Anguished Man. Sean Robinson, the owner of the painting, claims to have inherited the Anguished Man from his grandmother, who told him that the artist who created the painting had mixed his own blood into the paint and died by suicide soon after finishing the work. Robinson uploaded videos of the painting to his YouTube channel in 2010, in which he claims to have heard crying noises in his house, and once saw the figure of a man. The curse of the Anguished Man seems to be more overtly paranormal in its makeup, with Robinson describing the painting as evil. This was a sentiment echoed by his late grandmother, who kept the painting locked away and hidden for 25 years. Both Robinson and his wife have claimed to have witnessed a shadowy figure standing at the edge of their bed at night, just watching them. Consequently, his wife refuses to sleep in the same room as the painting. It has been theorized that the Anguished Man is likely a self-portrait, and that the supposed curse is much more personal and intimate in nature. Who this person was, though, and what connection they have to Robinson and his grandmother, remains a mystery. Perhaps Robinson himself created the image in a weird bid for attention and views. Regardless, though, the image of the Anguished Man has certainly left its impression as a contemporary example of a cursed painting. It is perhaps not a surprise to see the imagery of Edvard Munch make an appearance on this list. This painting in particular, Death and the Child, sometimes known as The Dead Mother, has a noteworthy reputation of being cursed. The painting, in its style and structure, bears a resemblance to the Anguished Man. The impressionistic brushstrokes seem to be aimed at sculpting an emotion more than anything else, that emotion once again being anguish. However, there is a stronger narrative to be found in this painting, albeit a simple one, with the inclusion of a dead mother laying behind the anguished child. Viewers of this work have often described the girl's eyes following them as they move, and I've also heard the soft rustling sounds of bed sheets when standing near the painting. Previous owners of the painting are said to have described the girl disappearing altogether from the canvas. Munch's mother and sister died of tuberculosis when he was a child, and the memories of that trauma were a reoccurring motif throughout his work. Munch was also influenced by the nihilist Hans Jaeger, who urged him to paint his own emotional and psychological state, described as soul painting, which led to his distinctive style. Could this so-called soul painting act as a conduit of emotional energy? And can such energy be transferred onto the viewer, thus creating a curse, or the illusion of one? Svetlana Telets, an artist from Vinnytsia, Ukraine, painted The Rain Woman, or The Woman of the Rain, in 1996, after reportedly feeling like she was constantly being watched for 6 months. According to the artist, she was sitting in front of a blank canvas when a clear vision of the final painting appeared to her. Feeling like someone was controlling her hand, she sketched the composition for 5 hours, then spent another month refining the details. After displaying it in a local art salon, multiple people successively bought the painting, only to return it to the seller after describing a figure following them in their homes and dreams. One temporary owner described white eyes appearing everywhere he looked, and returned the painting with an offer to pay back half the purchase price, fearing he might drown in the eyes if he kept it for any longer. The piece was eventually purchased by the musician Sergei Skashkov in 2008, though reportedly his wife later hid the painting after seeing a ghostly figure walk around their apartment at night. According to Archpriest Vitaly Goloskovich of the Transfiguration Cathedral in Vinnytsia, quote, "A person has a spirit and a soul. They are truly spiritual works of art, and there are soulful ones. And the painting you are talking about represents just such soulful art, and it doesn't come from God. The artist puts into the work the mood in which he was at the time of his writing, and it is not known who led the artist at that moment." Arshail Gorky was an Armenian-born painter who spent the last years of his life in America after fleeing from the Armenian genocide. The genocide in particular would prove to have a crucial influence over Gorky's art. In 1915, Gorky fled Armenia with his mother and 3 sisters into Russian-controlled territory. In the aftermath of the genocide, Gorky's mother died of starvation in 1919. The following year, Gorky arrived in America at the age of 16, where he would pursue art, linking himself to abstract expressionism. Without going into too much detail, it would appear that Gorky led a somewhat troubled life, and that trend would continue throughout. From 1946, Gorky suffered a series of crises. His studio barn burnt down, destroying his library and 30 of his paintings. He developed cancer, his wife was routinely unfaithful, and carried out affairs behind his back. In 1948, Gorky's neck was broken and his painting arm temporarily paralyzed in a car accident. Finally, his wife left him, taking their children with her. On July 21, 1948, after telling a neighbor and one of his students he was going to kill himself, Gorky was found hanged in his barn studio. On a nearby wooden crate he had written, "Goodbye, my loveds." Gorky is buried in North Cemetery in Sherman, Connecticut. It would appear that many of Gorky's paintings would not escape the negative energy surrounding his life, long after he was gone. It is perhaps not surprising that they are rumoured to be cursed, with paintings reportedly falling from walls, catching on fire, and being visited by a black-haired ghost in a blue overcoat. On March the 1st, 1962, American Airlines Flight 1, carrying 87 passengers, 8 crew members, and 15 abstract paintings by Gorky, crashed into a swamp 2 minutes after takeoff, killing everyone on board and destroying the paintings. So what do we make of all this? Can a painting really harbour a curse, be it intentional or otherwise? Or is it just psychology and coincidence? There's never going to be a clear answer to these questions that satisfies everyone. Superstition is hardwired into all of us to some extent. Everybody is wary of things they don't fully understand. Perhaps the most recent example of superstitious captivation would be the cursed sonnetu medallion, which seems to continue leaving a trail of victims in its wake. So, what makes a painting cursed? Well, we do. The artist who created the painting, the audience who view the painting, and something else. Something we don't fully understand. Well, if you've made it this far without smashing your head against a wall, I applaud you. Well done, and thanks for sticking around. Now, you may be wondering about a particular feature of this episode, namely the thumbnail image to this video. What cursed painting is this, and why didn't you talk about it? Well, as it turns out, this is actually one of my paintings I constructed myself. Now, is it cursed? Well, I couldn't tell you that. But I did follow the vague formula of soul painting briefly outlined in the video, so perhaps it is. Anyway, this painting along with many other items are available to purchase on my website. So feel free to check it out. Perhaps you'll be cursed, or perhaps you'll be blessed. Either way, these are not normal images. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks again for watching. See you next time.